All right, good morning. It's a Friday morning. I didn't slip up and say Monday. I haven't done that all day yet, even though I was trying to find some things I normally air on Mondays and wondering where they were.
Well, I was about late today. My assistant, she said, "Don't you think you need to go to the radio station?" And I said, "Oh man, I'm supposed to go today. I forgot."
That's right. We have the sheriff on Fridays now at 11:05.
Right.
So I'm here on 11. I guess most of the day on Friday, but I'm here. But then the sheriff will be here every Friday now at this time. Same place as we said last week. Same bat time, same bat channel, just a different bat day.
That's it. Just a different day.
Just a different day, and we'll talk about the same topics even.
Right.
That we're used to talking about. We're talking about things that are going on in the county, law enforcement, crime, how to keep your families safe, and even around the region too, because I know you have a lot of cooperation with other agencies.
Right.
And that's so important, especially where we live.
It is.
In bordering states, two bordering states.
It is. We've been working very well with Georgia here in recent days, and Georgia's not a reciprocal state of North Carolina. So when it comes to a lot of things that we do in law enforcement, we don't have jurisdiction in Georgia. Georgia does not have jurisdiction here. In Tennessee, for example, we can investigate crimes, and if we go over the border into Tennessee, if it's something that is originated here, we can go into a different state, into Tennessee to help investigate those crimes that happened here. Georgia's different. It's not a reciprocal state. However, what we have done as sheriffs in North Georgia and with us here in Western North Carolina is I've reached out to contact all the sheriffs there in North Georgia and the DEA and FBI and everybody down in the Atlanta district. And we've developed a very good working relationship with Georgia on trying to investigate, especially some of these drug crimes and things that are happening. And, a lot of of course, you saw the press release a couple of weeks ago, where the gentleman here in Murphy that was arrested down in White County, Georgia, trafficking of methamphetamine. And people here that has been going back and forth across the border in the past that has been relatively safe. We're trying to make it where they're not safe anymore, that we're going to get them wherever they're at. It doesn't matter if they're here or in Georgia. We're going to try to stop the drug flow, and we're going to arrest people wherever they're at.
I keep seeing a lot of press releases too from Monroe County Sheriff's Office, a lot of drug meth.
Right.
And there's a lot of rural areas in Monroe County. Is that kind of an attractive thing for folks that are manufacturing?
It is. A lot of times people, what we say about our areas and our rural areas here in Polk County, Monroe County, here in Western North Carolina, Cherokee, Clay, Graham, Swain, those counties here in extreme western North Carolina. But a lot of times you have people who are main supply dealers in some of these bigger towns, in Gainesville and Rome and in Chattanooga and in Asheville and different places. And sometimes when the heat gets put on them in these cities, they like to come to places like Murphy and just kind of hang out, just kind of get a rental house, kind of hang out to get away from where the heat's put on them. But what typically happens is once they stay here for a while, they realize, hey, I can bring my market here and begin to sell here and do things here. Well, when we start looking at them, putting the heat on them here, sometimes they go back to Georgia, back to Tennessee, back to Buncombe County, back to Charlotte, back to these places. And so what we're developing now is a relationship with all these different places to wherever they go back to, we've got contacts and resources in these places where we can continue the investigations and bring information to these places where they can investigate them in their places too. And so that's one of the things that I've been real vocal about with our drug people, our narcotics people, is that I'm an elected official. I like to have the press release. I like to show that we did this here in Cherokee County. But it's more important to me to get the drugs off the street than it is to get the press release. So if they're in a different state and a different county, and we can help work with them to get them arrested there, let's go ahead and do it. And let's get them arrested and get them sent off to prison and whatever jurisdiction they're in. If they're gone, they're not dealing drugs to our kids here in Cherokee County. So that's kind of been my goal. It's not to get the press release, but my goal has been to get them off the street.
And there's a lot of activity that does flow from Cherokee County to other counties,
right.
and so probably a lot more than the general public realizes.
Right. Well, just like with the White County incident and with a couple other things that we've had, we've really had opportunity to keep that information to ourselves and say, okay, let's just wait till they get back. Let's trail them, let's follow them, let's wait till they get back, and we can take them off here in Cherokee County. But then you always run that risk of, well, what if they stay? What if they don't come back?
Right.
What if they get rid of it while they're there? So that's why we feel like it's more important to contact these other jurisdictions and arrest people where we know they're at and where we know they're in possession of things, so that we can go ahead and get them off the street. And like I say, that's more important to me than the press release.
A few months ago, there was the high-speed chase that ended up in Tennessee that started here with a murder here,
Right.
And you had to work with the governor of Tennessee on that situation. What was the latest on that situation?
Yeah, what happens there is that there's an extradition process. Is when they're in a different state, they can do one of two things. If they're wanted for a crime here but they're arrested somewhere else, if they're charged here in Cherokee County but they're arrested in a different state on our charges, they can what they call waive extradition. They can just sign a piece of paper saying, I'm not going to protest it, I'm not going through the hassle of all this, I'll just waive extradition, you can take me back to Cherokee County, I'll go face whatever charges there are there. If they won't do that, and if they say, no, I'm not signing anything, I'm not going, then what it takes is an extradition process, which basically what it means is the governor of our state contacts the governor of the other state. Now we know they don't pick up a phone call and talk to each other.
Right.
That's the paperwork. It's the governor's work, what it's called. It goes through their office. But what happens is the governor of one state contacts the governor of the other state, stating he has a crime here in North Carolina in this jurisdiction, and is requesting the governor of the other state to relinquish the prisoner to North Carolina. And so it has to go through that process. There's a 10-day appeal process and all this kind of stuff for that. And so it'll eventually get back here. It just takes longer to get here, and it takes longer to get back to the system. And
Well, I was just curious what kind of process,
well,
what kind of time.
I've never really understood why people want to protest that. I mean, if it's some charge that, like for example, in Georgia, writing a bad check in Georgia is a felony. So if you're arrested in New York on a bad check in Georgia, I could kind of see how you'd want to protest it, not be extradited back to Georgia on a bad check. I understand that. Right. Then you may want to go through that process, and then what may say is that governor may say, well, I'm not going to contact the governor of Georgia over a bad check. So we're not going to do it. Turn them loose. And so I understand there's times that you'd want to do that. But when you're charged with a major crime, when you're charged with murder, drug trafficking, rape, some of these sexual assaults, and some of these different things that's happening, I never understood why they didn't just go ahead and waive extradition and come back, because they're going to get brought back anyway.
They're just delaying time.
They're just delaying time. And so it's kind of that process that goes forth. And then once all that's signed, and once the governors agree to relinquish the prisoner to the other state, then it's just setting up a transport of getting that prisoner and picking them up and bringing them back.
So right now that suspect is in a detention center still in Tennessee?
Right. I think one of the problems is there also, I think they're, when you're arrested in another state, you may have charges in that state also.
Right.
And so I think on this particular thing, I think there might have been some drug charges, if I remember correctly, with a high-speed pursuit, right. some officer assault type things. And so what would happen is they would clear that up in that state. They would go through their process, their court system, and clear that up before they would send that prisoner back to North Carolina. And so sometimes it takes a little bit longer than that because they have charges in the state they're picked up in. So once they clear all of those state charges out, then they'll relinquish them back to the other state that wants them.
I've seen some neighboring counties talk about having some counterfeit money passing through their areas.
Right.
Have we had a problem with that here in Cherokee County?
We've not necessarily had a problem with it. We have had it pop up in some different places throughout the county. One thing that you'll see with the amount of people that we have traveling through the area now, I've meant to contact the Department of Transportation and try to get a count to see what kind of count they've had lately on the traffic. But I don't have to tell you traffic has picked up.
Yeah, it has.
And I don't have to tell you that it gets busy at times out there. But with all the people moving through and all the people outside of North Carolina that's coming through the area, those are things that you're typically going to see. You're going to see those counterfeits dropped off at gas stations, at sometimes hotels or restaurants. We've not had a real huge problem with it, but we have seen a few popping up in the area.
I remember being a kid, riding back and forth from Hanging Dog to town with Dad.
Right.
And pretty much back then you threw up your hand every time you met a car just to say hello.
Right.
It's a different world now.
It is.
I mean, we don't have that same amount of friendliness as we had when we were kids, and we pretty much knew everybody up and down the road. And I was riding out in Hanging Dog with my mom a couple of weeks ago, I guess last week, and we just pretty much went house by house as we looking at all the people, the good old people that had passed away. That
Right.
it's just a different feeling when we grew up because we knew everybody. And we basically, it's a big family back then. But now, with so many people moving in, we don't know even our next door neighbor.
That's true. And I was sharing the other day with some people that I can remember as a child going to weekend trips, going to Pigeon Forge or Gatlinburg or different places where we'd be gone for 2 or 3 days, and it'd be in the summertime. And we would just get in the car and leave our windows up in the summer, leave doors unlocked, all those kind of things. Because of that very fact of the road that we lived on, we knew everybody that lived up and down the road. We knew who our neighbors were. Everybody kind of looked out for each other. If you were gone, somebody was kind of watching, see if anybody was around, kind of thing. And we've lost a lot of that small community type mentality with that. A lot of our development, some places that a lot of houses have went in. A lot of times you don't know your neighbor who lives just across the street.
Right.
And so we have that influx of people that's come to our area that wasn't necessarily born and raised here, that we didn't grow up with, we didn't go to school with. And so whenever you have that in the area, you never know who you have next door or where they're from or their background or things of that nature. I will say this, though, however, that I do feel like we still have a great community. I feel like that we have a lot of great people that live here. We do have people that watch out for you and take care of you, and I was sharing with some people the other day, and I shared with you before the air, just the other day, myself and some officers were at a restaurant eating, and we got ready to pay our bill, and the waiter told us that someone had paid for our meal for us, just didn't know who it was, didn't ask who it was, just that somebody who was paying their bill to leave had paid ours while they were paying, and just simply said thank you, to law enforcement for the work you do. And so we still have a small town community feel. We still have people who do take care of each other. It's just a little different than it was when we were growing up.
Yeah, I'm sure that was special because that does show that people appreciate what you do,
right?
And other officers as well.
Right.
And law enforcement is not an easy field. It's something you don't go in for big paychecks and just an easy day on the job.
Well, one thing also about law enforcement that people tend to forget a lot of times, and I was appreciative of the fact that I did hear a news reporter say this on TV yesterday, I believe it was, the fact that someone did acknowledge it. He said on TV, and it's true, he said, these law enforcement officers have to make split-second decisions and things based on what they're seeing and what's in front of them, and we get the next 20 years to watch it on video and analyze it for what they do,
Right.
And so, it's easy to sit back later and analyze something on video and say, well, you should have did this, you should have done that, you should have, handled it this way or did it that way. But when you're the one who is there having to make the decision what to do and things are happening in front of you, and you're not sure whether this person is wanting to kill you or not, you're not sure what this person is capable of, making those split-second decisions, unfortunately, sometimes you make the wrong decision.
Yeah, that's not something I can specialize in. So
Right.
I understand people hear, dead air all the time because I'm trying to figure out which button to push. Usually when I'm making a big decision, it takes me a couple of months to weigh all my options and explore. So the ability to make those split-second decisions is so crucial in your job,
Right.
and you're always hoping that you're making the right decision.
Well, and the thing about it is, like, just using an example, say like a traffic stop at night, and you stop a car and somebody jumps out of the car and starts running, and you see something shiny in their hand. I mean, you have to make that decision. Did I just see a cell phone? Did I just see a weapon? Did I just see a knife? Did I see a gun? What did I see? And that person may turn on you and come toward you while you're trying to figure this out and while you're trying to make these decisions. And so all of this can happen within a matter of 2 or 3 seconds. And you're having to make all these decisions, whether someone's life is in your hands or whether your own life is going to be lost or not. And trying to make these decisions, and like I say, through body cameras and dash cameras and these things, it's easy to look back and slow it down in slow motion and say, well, that's a cell phone. You know, why did he shoot him for having a cell phone in his hand? But when it's all in the matter of a couple seconds and you're trying to make these decisions, sometimes it's not that easy. It's not that easy to make that determination.
He could be out running away and he could have buddies in his car waiting around. So you're kind of having to do a whole area check to see.
And that's my biggest complaint about the body camera issue. And I know they're making them now with like a 200-degree field of view, you know, and these kind of things, which is helping. But my problem with the body cameras is, and analyzing these things and releasing them to the public, is you're just seeing straight ahead what that camera's seeing. Right. You're not seeing the people circling around behind your back. You're not seeing the neighbors that's coming off the hill screaming at you. You know, you're not seeing the other cars that's pulling in and stopping on the road. You know, and you're not knowing whether these people are stopping to help you or whether they're stopping to help attack you. You know, you don't know what their purpose is. And so that body camera doesn't see all that other action that's going on behind you, and you might hear people screaming in the background, and you can't determine whether they're screaming at the suspect or they're screaming at you, or, you know. And so you have all these things to take into consideration. And going back to what I said before, you know, when you're sitting on the big screen TV and you're analyzing this, it's easy to say you should do this, you should do that. Why did you use that amount of force, or why did you do this? But when you're making those split-second decisions, it's not that easy to do.
I can see it now. The politicians are going to figure out a way for you all to wear helmets with a 360 camera on top and that records all the sound.
It'll eventually, something of that nature will come up. I'm certain of it.
Oh, goodness.
Yeah.
All right. One of the things that the Sheriff's Office shared on their Facebook page this past week was about a registered sex offender. And it is your duty to report to the community, you know, to keep their kids safe and families safe. And one of the ones that created interest this past week is that a registered sex offender had listed an address in Hanging Dog Campground.
Right.
And there was concern that that's a place where children are. So what are the...
Well, a couple of things about that. One is they're only required to report where they're going to be. Mm-hmm. We've had people report, and it's perfectly legal to do so, but we've had people report they're living in their car at such and such place in the woods, you know. Mm-hmm. We've had people report, I'm living under this bridge, or we've had people report, you know, I want to stay in this house, you know, for 2 weeks, and then they'll have to come back in after that and report somewhere else. Or I want to stay with a friend for 3 weeks, you know, and this is their address. They're only required to come and report where they're staying, where they're living. One of the things, and I know the issue of children always comes up, and you know, and where children are, not every sex offender is required to stay away from children.
Right.
Not everyone. Sometimes there may be a sex offender who maybe, for example, maybe have committed rape on an adult female. And so there was no children involved in it, but they still have to register as a sex offender.
Right.
Sometimes because of whatever the crime may be, they may have to register for a few years. Sometimes they may have to register for many years. Sometimes they may have to register for a lifetime, depending on what their crimes are. But even the ones that are required to stay away from children and stay around where children are, those are typically only the organized daycares and school facilities. Mm-hmm. Licensed daycare and school facilities is where they're considered that they have to stay away from. One of the arguments I've been, and really it's been tried both ways and it's still debatable, but one of the arguments I've been is they're not even required to stay away from a church service where they're having Sunday school. Mm-hmm. And the reason being is because that Sunday school program is not a licensed daycare facility. Now, you do have other places, like, for example, like Murphy First Baptist Church, that does have a daycare that runs that daycare throughout the week.
Right.
And so they would be in a different situation there than they would be in a lot of other churches. So, you know, even in those places, those are debatable things that people argue. Some prosecutors will say, no, they can't be there. They can't be around Sunday schools and churches. Other prosecutors will say, no, they can, you know. Some judges will rule in favor of them not being at the church. Some will rule in favor of them having the right to be there. So those are still debatable things and things to go. But the general rule is it has to be a licensed daycare facility. Mm-hmm. Now, going back to the Hanging Dog Campground, for example, if there are probably kids in that campground, probably kids camping with families and stuff down there. However, because that is not a licensed gathering place, there is no requirement for them not to be there, and we can't require them not to be anywhere children is, because if you do that, they would not be able to go anywhere.
Right.
I mean, no matter what store, no matter what building, no matter where you go,
Couldn't go grocery shopping.
you couldn't go grocery shopping. You couldn't go to Walmart. You couldn't go, to a theater. You couldn't go anywhere where children are, and that could literally be every building, every place in the county. So you can't do a generalized requirement like that you can't be around anywhere children's at. So that's why, I know a lot of people get upset about that, and I know a lot of people don't understand that. And they say, well, they shouldn't be able to. Well, I may have that same opinion too, but what we feel like should or shouldn't be is different than what the actual law states. And so we can only enforce what the legislation and what the law states.
What happens if a registered sex offender, say, goes on vacation to, say, Gatlinburg, Tennessee or whatever? Do they have to report that they're going to be leaving town?
If they are there, I believe, and don't hold me to this, but I think it's if they're going to be residing somewhere more than 10 days, I think is what the limit is, then they have to report that. If they're just going on vacation over the weekend or somewhere, they don't have to report on going on vacation. But if they're going to be somewhere, I believe it's 10 days. It could be 14, but I think it's 10 days. If they're going to be somewhere more than that length of time, then they have to report that I'm going to be out of town and go to this place. If it's going to a different state, or I know a lot of times we get people who that come up from Georgia or come up from Florida, and they're going to stay here a couple of weeks with friends. They'll come to the sheriff's office just to report to the sheriff's office, I'm going to be in your state for 2 weeks, or I'll be in your state for this amount of time. I had a rental cabin or with friends or whatever, and I'm required to report, so I'm reporting. They have to report the state they're leaving from, and they have to report the state that they're going to. So there's time requirements attached with that.
What's the process of that? I know you've had problems with people not checking in before, and then you have to actually issue a notification. We're trying to find this person who failed to report.
Right.
How long does it take for them to do that?
To what? To find them, or to?
No, to actually do they have to go into the sheriff's office and just fill out a form, or how?
Yeah, it's a one-page form. Basically, they come in and fill that out. If they report to Cherokee County, say on a Sunday evening, they can wait till Monday morning when the office opens on Monday morning to report. But if they have to report at the first available time that the office is open.
So it's not a cumbersome process, just a
one-page form. I'm going to be here. This is my address. This is what I'm driving, kind of thing, and just report where they're going to be. And once they do that, they're in compliance with the law.
So really, there's no good reason not to do that unless you're just trying to hide.
Just trying to hide is the only reason that we found that people don't do that. And sometimes people just get tired of reporting. They get tired of their whereabouts and where they're going, and and having to report everywhere it goes. So sometimes they take chances. Well, nobody's going to know that I'm going to be in Tennessee for 2 weeks, so I'm just going to go over there, and not tell anybody, just because they're lazy or just don't want to do it or just feel like they shouldn't have to. Right. But when they do that, they're in violation of the law. So if we do at the sheriff's office spot checks, and we ever so often, and even with the entire registry that we have in Cherokee County, sometimes we'll call officers in off duty or on their day off or whatever, and we'll get up with Roger Williams, and he will go over the sex offender database of who's supposed to be here in Cherokee County. And we'll actually divvy it up between the officers, and they'll go to these locations and check on them, see if they're there. And what happens is if we go to a place and we find out that someone's moved, or we find out that they're no longer at that residence and they've not reported to Roger, then that's a lot of times when you see those notifications go out that we've done a check, they're no longer here, we don't know where they are. So if anybody knows where this person is, please report to the sheriff's office so we can track them down and find them and find out where they're at.
And while we're on the topic, what is the policy for nights like Halloween when kids are going door to door trick or treating, and there's a sex offender's house there? Are they allowed to give candy out? And
for the most part, no. Typically, what we will do is they will call in, or they will turn their lights off or block the yard off or whatever, not do that. One thing I do want to encourage people is if you know you're going to Duke Street, or you're going to a certain place, Hayesville, or you're going to Andrews to, up around there around the high school to trick or treat, and you know you're going to these areas, and you're taking kids, just take a minute to check on the sex offender database on the internet. And just click on it, look, and you can search an area, you can search a grid, and it can tell you all the locations, all the houses within that area that there's registered sex offenders. So, I know we put a lot of pressure on the sex offender themselves to report and where they're at and what's going on, but I think as parents, we need to take a little responsibility ourselves.
Absolutely.
And know what we're doing and where we're going and where we're taking our kids to and things of that nature. And like I say, it's not the world we grew up in. It's
Right.
not the Murphy and Andrews and Cherokee County. It's not the same county it was 40 something years ago that I was
Yeah.
born.
Yeah, I was just imagining 3 decades ago when my parents
Right.
took me, or 3.5 decades ago when
Right.
my parents were taking us, me and my sister, trick-or-treating. We only went to people's homes that we knew them
Right.
very well. They're family members, friends of the family, but never to a strange house that we've never been to.
Right.
So they were responsible on that.
Well, just with a little Halloween safety in August.
That's right.
I could tell you also, so when you're doing that, as far as having parent responsibility, also, not only check the database and know where you're taking your kids and what houses and what sex offenders are in the area and those type of things, but also, inspect your candy. Don't let them walk without reflective stuff on, and don't let them, be in places you don't know where they're at and all that kind of stuff. So we need to take a little responsibility as parents ourselves. And it's easy to, just like this guy, he registered Hanging Dog Campground. So if you're going to go out and you're concerned about sex offenders, click on the database. You'll see a pop-up there where one's registered at Hanging Dog Campground.
You know what he looks
And
like.
knows
at
what he
that
looks
point.
like. If you don't want to go there and you don't want to camp there, or if you want to go but you want to know where he's at and what he looks like, you can have all that information.
Right. The way with the electronic communications nowadays, almost everything is at people's fingertips now.
Right. And it's, like I say, it goes back to a little bit of responsibility on ourselves to know where we're at, what we're doing, and where our kids are.
Right. Yeah. Back in the day, we used to be just run up and down the road and play as kids and not ever have any parental supervision.
Well, I'll tell you a funny little story about back in the day. The road that goes in front of our house was a gravel road. And so my sister and I used to go down with our little trucks and toys and all that. We would sit, hit the microphone. We'd go down with our little trucks and stuff, and we'd sit in the middle of the road and play with our trucks and our little dozers and all those kind of things. And we could hear a car coming way off, and we'd gather all of our stuff up, and we'd get out of the road, and we'd wait for the car to pass, and then we'd get back out of the road and sit down and start playing again. And so, the old saying, go playing in the road, we literally did go
I
playing
actually
in the
did
road.
that.
Yeah.
Yeah, growing up on an old gravel road, I remember that.
Right.
Yeah, we were the same way out in Hanging Dog on Cooks Creek Road.
Right.
And, I only ran away from home one time. It was just down the next door to my aunt,
Right.
my aunt's house, and she told my mom he didn't run away from home. He just get some strawberries.
Right. Yeah.
She was looking out for me.
And I remember also, too, growing up like that, if you saw law enforcement in the area, if you saw a highway patrol car or the sheriff's office come through, everybody was in a panic wanting to know why they were there and why they were in that area, because we did look out for each other and did watch out for each other. And so we really didn't have any troubles or anything growing up. So it was we have Party Line on the radio, but then on the Party Line telephone,
Right.
everybody was on the Party Line wanting to know what was happening in the community, and why the police was there and all those kind of things. And
Yeah, we never saw police on our patrolling our road
Right.
because I guess there wasn't the need or the budget to
Right.
enforce all that at that time. But one that takes me back, I remember Grandma and Grandpa would always call a hearse an ambulance.
Yeah.
It's like, why in the world? But apparently, at one time, the ambulances were the ones who
Right.
served as the person
Right, who picked up the bodies.
bodies.
Yeah.
So I learned that later in life.
Right.
But yet, for the longest, that's what they called was the ambulance.
Right.
So that's just a trip back in memory lane.
Yeah, but going back to the sex offender thing and the registrations and stuff, we tend to forget a lot of times is that with these people, even though I don't want them babysitting my kids, I don't want my kids around them and all those type of things. They do also have due process and have laws, and they do have constitutional rights and all these kind of things. And so we have to keep all those things in consideration when dealing with them. One of the things about Facebook and social media sites, people can say some awful things.
Oh, yeah.
Some very cruel things and some very hateful things on there. And so we need to also remember that even though this person may have committed horrendous crimes, they may have done things that are worthy of punishment and worthy of punishment on many levels, that they're still someone's son, they're still someone's brother, uncle, friend, you know. And so we have to also remember that when we're posting things on Facebook and talking about people.
And I see some of these comments. I'm wondering how that is helping.
Right.
But some of these people are pretty much at the bottom of their lives, and they probably need someone to just reach out and help instead of shun them out or criticize or make them feel horrible. How can we help people do better?
And that's the thing too. You know, going back to what we're talking about, the sex offender. Immediately when we know somebody's on the register, we go back to a crime against a child. But not everyone on that is a crime against a child.
Each person has a different story.
different stories, different things. I know of people before who, you know, and I'm not going to hear name names and tell you this, but I know of situations before where people were in high school dating relationships, but they were past the age, and it might be a senior and a 8th grader or a senior and a freshman. And that person wound up getting pregnant or something of that nature, but because of the age difference, they wound up on the sex offender registry. And so there wasn't a rape, there wasn't a violent crime, there wasn't any of these things. A lot of these times that I know happen, parents knew it, and they condoned the dating, and they let them date. But because of the age difference and the circumstances, they wound up on the sex offender registry, and wound on that for many years. And back in then, sometimes you had to register for a lifetime.
Right.
And so when you automatically see that sex offender, alerts go up, you know, everybody gets all it said and all these kind of things. But it could simply be a situation like that that's the reason they're on it. So we need to also take those kind of things in consideration when dealing with people.
Absolutely. All right. I can see our time is up for the day. Anything you want to cover before we?
No, I just want to once again thank our community for what a great community we have, and all the resources and help that we have out there. You know, we're continuing to fight this drug crimes in the area. We're continuing to try to track down some of these people who are stealing things and breaking into houses and all this kind of stuff. And we can't do this without help from the public. And we get a lot of information, a lot of tip lines, a lot of people calling and just saying, hey, I saw this, or I know that's going on here. And sometimes, like I say, you may not see us right then, and you may think you've wasted your call or your information by calling. But every piece of information we get is important, and everything that we get helps us solve these crimes that are out there. So I just want to thank my community for calling in this information and helping us. We can't do it without you.
And the tip line information is pretty much on the bottom of every press release that goes out. And I think the number is 837-1344.
I believe it is.
And then there's the long email address, crime.tips@Cherokee
County-NC.gov, I think is what it is.
Yeah, I never can remember that one because of the special punctuation. But
and then also Facebook, you know, we got our Facebook page, personal pages. Several of the officers have personal pages they get information from. People send them private messages and stuff, and people send me private messages and text messages about things. And so we just appreciate that. We appreciate the fact that we do have a community out there that's concerned, that does help us do our job. And like I say, there's things that we can do on our own, but we can't fight this battle by ourselves. It takes a community to fight it.
All right, Sheriff. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
We'll do it again next Friday at 11:05 right here on WKRK 105.5 FM, 1320 AM, cable 25, and worldwide at country.am.